Welcome everyone to this presentation on automating your daily SQL Server database checks with Windows PowerShell. I decided to share a little bit of my experience working in the past as an operational DBA. My name is Edwin Sarmiento, and in a previous life I was an operational DBA, and I can relate. The life of a SQL Server DBA is very hard. Let's just put it that. It is hard. You have to manage different roles. You have to put on different hats depending on what you're trying to do, with a continuous demand for your skills, your capabilities, your time, your attention, and whatnot. There's so many things. Like, for instance, weekend on-call duties is one of those things that I hated. The fact that I would have to start on a Friday night, 6 p.m. Eastern, because I'm in the Eastern time zone, 6 p.m. Eastern, up until, on Friday, up until like 6 p.m. Sunday. That's how long it takes for me to be on call. You'll get all the alerts, you'll get all of the issues, not to mention you won't be able to sleep. God forbid that something else goes wrong, right? But you also have to keep on your toes with all of the alerts, all of the issues. You would have to respond within a certain SLA. In addition to that, on a regular day or the normal, because it really depends on what the normal day would look like. On a normal day to day, you get loaned to the development team in addition to making modifications to their stored procedures or functions, optimizing their queries, maybe adding indexes or maybe changing the schema, making changes to the parameters so that it doesn't do implicit conversion when executed. A lot of these things you get loaned to the development team, other than the fact that you're the only database guy in there. Most of the developers know nothing or barely know anything about relational database. You get loaned to them. And then you are assigned as a principal escalation engineer. I remember working as an operational DBA because I was kind of like the subject matter expert for high availability and disaster recovery. I would get called in on a normal day, in addition to the on-call assignments. I would get called in to be an escalation engineer, meaning if something goes wrong with an availability group or a failover clustered instance, or back in those days, database mirroring, I will get called in on a Wednesday, 3 o'clock in the morning, just so I can fix the issue. In addition to the weekend on-call assignments and the normal day-to-day, and of course, running your daily database checks. There's just so many things that you have to do as a database administrator, taking care of the day-to-day operations, and there's just way too many things on your plate. Like that picture over there. You are juggling too many responsibilities, too many assignments, in addition to some months where you would be assigned as the DBA for a specific project, meaning in addition to you implementing and designing, you would be the lead engineer for that specific project. So in addition to all of the things that we've already mentioned, the weekend on-call, doing stuff for the database developers, or the developers, even being an escalation engineer, doing day-to-day database daily checks, you would be assigned to projects, more than one sometimes, and it can get really overwhelming, literally overwhelming, to a point where when you're getting and I like to use this as an analogy. I have family members and friends who work in the healthcare industry. Some of them work in hospice care. And it's interesting listening to their stories of the people who are on their deathbeds. And I kind of took some of the things that they've been saying, stories that they've been telling, and used this and make something that is relatable to us. That being said, No DBA on their deathbed said something like this: I wish I had spent more time with my database servers. And the reality is, again, even people on their deathbeds, they spend so much time doing things that don't really matter. And I'm not saying that your job doesn't matter. I'm just saying it's just taking too much of your time, it's taking too much of your sanity, and it's taking too much of you that you kind of wonder, is this the only thing that really matters? Okay? And like I said, even people in hospice care, sometimes they would reflect upon the things that they've done, and nobody ever said, I wish I spent more time at work doing things that has nothing to do with my wellness. And this is the thing that you really have to think about as an operational DBA, because time is a very limited resource. It is a very limited resource. Your talents, your skills, your capabilities are also very limited resources. We want to spend more time for ourselves, time where instead of, I don't know what you're thinking, instead of looking at those critical alerts that your monitoring tool has sent over the past couple of days, and I'm guilty of this in the past. I would do a Control-A and Shift-Delete just to delete all the critical alerts, because I can guarantee you won't be able to read every single one of them, and you start to see the patterns when you look at a specific alert from a specific server at a specific time. You kind of see some patterns, and that's why, again, I'm guilty of this as well. You do a Control-A, Shift-Delete, delete everything on that critical alerts folder, because, again, you want to spend more time for yourself. You want to spend more time doing things that you love, something that would refresh you, that would energize you. You want to spend meaningful time with your family and friends. And again, there's no denying the fact that work is very demanding. There's no denying the fact that things need to be done still. And so how can we make sure that we get a lot more done, still be as productive, but not killing ourselves to death, because there's only limited time in the day. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, nobody has ever added more time in a day other than managing priorities so that we can maximize our 24 hours. And I always tell people that I may specialize in high availability, but I'm not highly available because I love my sleep. I love my sleep. I love my 7.5 hours on average. I love spending time for myself. I love taking long walks, going on bike rides, and going on hiking. And this is very important because stuff needs to be done still. But you have to think of a better way on how to get them done without working more hours. You want to be more productive without spending more time working. And this is where automation comes in. This is where PowerShell comes in. Fun fact, and this is an interesting fact, almost all Windows Server products standardize on using Windows PowerShell. Well, nowadays it's no longer called Windows PowerShell because Microsoft open sourced it. Now it's called Microsoft PowerShell, not just Windows PowerShell. And because this has become a standard, it's a common engineering criteria, in fact, server products that you will be working on, you have been working on, will have a PowerShell module, a PowerShell commandlet to properly manage it. Even those that don't, you will be able to find a wrapper in order for you to interact with it so that you can start automating stuff. Right? There are tons of products, VMware, Hyper-V, System Center, even stuff outside of the Microsoft realm, like I said, VMware. I remember a couple of years ago when I was brought in on a project where we were migrating servers from one data center to another data center. I was responsible for the SQL Server stuff, but we were, in my case, we were migrating around 400 plus servers, SQL servers, that is, in addition to more than 800 plus Windows and Linux and Unix servers. Because they standardized on using NetApp, and NetApp has a bunch of PowerShell commands that I can use, I stitched together a couple of NetApp PowerShell commandlets, Windows PowerShell commandlets, and SQL Server PowerShell commandlets in order to get the migration done in less than an hour and a half. That's the power of having automation. Of course, SQL Server has built-in PowerShell commandlets, so you can take advantage of those things. So I think it's about time for us to embrace automation, PowerShell specifically. So let's get started, okay? Now, I have a question for you. What comes to mind when you see this image? Now, maybe it's just me, maybe it comes with age, but this is the icon that represents compressed hypertext markup. Back in those days, the help files were in this format. Nowadays, you can just look at documentation online. Back in the Windows NT 4 days, Windows 2000 days, Windows 2000, Server 2003 days, help files are compressed in this format. And they get shipped, they get copied onto your machine so you can open them up. This reminds me of the extension file CHM. Let's start with some fundamentals that we could use to explore and what's the word I'm looking for? Explore and figure things out within PowerShell. Because for one, there's so many PowerShell commandlets out there. There's so many modules for every different product, and I don't like memorizing stuff. So what I do is I start off with these 3 PowerShell commandlets. Now, nowadays it's just 2, and you'll realize later why. PowerShell has this verb-noun naming convention, meaning every commandlet will follow a verb-noun naming convention, so it's easy to guess and discover. That's what I was thinking about. It's easy to discover commandlets that are available, what they're for, what they're used for. Okay? Verb is the action. Noun happens to be the recipient of that action. I'll give you an example. C stands for command or get-command. If you could guess, this commandlet will retrieve all of the commands or commandlets available on the workstation that you're working on. Okay? It could be thousands and thousands and thousands, but again, the commandlet simply does what its name suggests. Retrieve or get all of the available commandlets. Okay? H stands for help or get-help. In previous versions like PowerShell version 1 or even the pre-release version of PowerShell, the Monad days, and PowerShell v2, I use this commandlet a lot to explore and discover other commandlets because this is literally the man file. Or again, if you're coming from Linux or Unix world, the man pages, it's the help file. It describes the command, it describes how to use the command, parameters, and some examples, even detailed examples. But nowadays, I'll just go to the internet because I wouldn't know if the help files were downloaded and installed on the machine that I'll be working on. And then there's get member. PowerShell commandlets return objects, not text, not string. It's a bunch of objects, collections or collection of objects. So you have to know what are the properties, methods, or events that represent the result for that specific commandlet. Let's get into our demo environment. Plain and simple, I have should I say I have a DBA Workstation? And what I mean by DBA Workstation is I have all of my tools in this machine. It's a Windows 10 machine. I have all of my tools in this machine, and I would use the tools to connect to the servers. I don't remote desktop into the servers to check things like what are the processes, what are the services, how much free space, what's the CPU and memory utilization like. I don't. I just use the tools on my DBA Workstation. And I just use PowerShell ISE, or the integrated scripting environment, because again, the assumption here is this is the only thing that I would have when I go to a customer environment. I can install Azure Data Studio, I can install other third-party tools for writing scripts, so I stick with what's available on a workstation or on a server. Your Windows server has this by default. So let's use the get command, PowerShell command. Now, I like the fact that you can do tab auto-completion with this. When I was a developer from way back when, one of the reasons I switched from Visual Basic to C# was because of tab autocomplete. I could write a line just by hitting a few tab strokes and some text alongside with those and the dot notation. Here you can use tab autocomplete. Like for instance, you can tab through the different commandlets. That's one. But let's stick with the get command commandlet and run it. Now, I did mention this is my DBA Workstation, which means I am going to get more than 1,000 commandlets in here, because I have commandlets that I use for managing Active Directory, managing DNS, managing failover clustering, managing Azure, managing AWS. They're all in here. There's just way too many of them. Okay? But it gives me an idea of what is available. So let me just pause this here real quick. I don't need everything. So what I'm going to do is I am going to filter and only display commands with a get dash something. Okay? I will only retrieve commandlets that have the get verb. Get that? And this is a subset of that, because it doesn't include anything that does not have the word or the prefix get or the verb dash get. So those with new, those with remove are not included in here. So you can start doing discovery of what the available commandlets are. So let's pick one in here. I got the get Windows Edition. So let me try that. Windows Edition. And it tells me it is a commandlet. This is the name, and it's version 3.0. I can then use get help. To know more how to use this specific commandlet. And of course, just by guessing the name of the commandlet, it probably is going to display the edition of Windows that I'm currently running on. But assuming I don't know, because I'm just guessing, this is an example of using the get help commandlet, where it tells me all of these, although it does tell me that, hey, cannot find the help file because you didn't download it. Now, I'd rather not download the help file. So what I typically do is I just go on my favorite search engine, get Windows Edition, and this becomes my my help file. A lot easy. Instead of relying on the help file. But going back to this, get Windows Edition. And let's just use one of the parameters online. Oops. Let's use one of the parameters online. And even within the PowerShell integrated scripting environment, there's tab autocomplete, there's prompting of parameters. When you use the minus sign, it prompts for the parameters so long as the commandlet has been loaded or the module has been loaded. So in this case, it's online, or get Windows Edition online. Okay, pretty straightforward. I'm running Windows 10 Enterprise N Edition. Okay, what else? Let's say, for instance, I want to know all the different services that are running on this machine. I can use the get service, PowerShell commandlet, to display all of the different services running. Okay? Tab autocomplete tells me you could pass the name of the service that you want to check, whether it started, it stopped, it's paused, anything. So I'll use MSSQL, of course, SQL Server, because that's what this is all about, right? I want to check the status of my SQL Server service on this machine, and it is currently running. By the way, I'm running SQL Server, I believe 2016 Developer Edition on this workstation for my own personal use. And that's what you see there, that it is running. I can also start looking at event logs. Get event log, event or entry type. I only want to look at the system. Entry type system or entry type, or rather source system, and then, or better yet, log name is system. I only want to look at system. Entry type, errors. Let's start with this. And this tells me all of the errors in the Windows event log. Some of the things that you would do as part of your day-to-day check. You know, for the last 24 hours, maybe you want to look at all of the errors that happen on machine. And you can still filter, like after, let's say a specific date, 9/30/2024. I only want system errors after the 30th of September 2024. So there's a handful instead of displaying everything that's in the Windows event log. This is one of those examples of using PowerShell. And keep in mind, we're just discovering all of these things. You could also, again, figure out what other commandlets are available. I would use the get commandlet, and if I know the module name, I can pass that to display all of the different commandlets for that specific module. I did mention that I use this for AWS. So let's see what we have in here. I got, EC2 related PowerShell commandlets. What about Azure? These are the ones for Azure. And these ones are applicable to just about anything. With the AWS one, I only downloaded EC2 related PowerShell commandlets, whereas for Azure, it's basically everything. There's just way too much. I can also, and why am I doing this? Because again, I don't remember everything. I'm so not going to memorize everything. I would remember the things that I use on a regular basis. One of the things that I would use, or one of the commandlets that I use a lot is the get service, because I want to check whether or not a specific service, in this case SQL Server, is up and running. Okay. What else? Fail over clusters. And it tells me all of these things based on the module. And again, we're just in the discovery phase, but keep in mind, as you discover the commandlets, it becomes easy for you to discover what other commandlets are available, what are they doing, what can I do with this, what kind of information did I get, maybe I can change something, okay? But keep in mind, our goal for this session is mainly for discovery, meaning we want to check for things that we do or things that we check on a daily basis for our databases, best practices, things that are outside of the desired state configuration, right? Let us switch back to our slide. So you've seen get command, a little bit of get help, and then get member. Okay. The thing is, I want to introduce you to the concept of piping or pipes. Because even PowerShell has them. What you have with pipes in PowerShell is you're taking the output of one commandlet, passing it through another commandlet to pipes, just like how you use pipes where fluid, man, I don't want to go through physics definition. It could be water, it could be anything, it could be molasses, I don't know. You're taking fluid from one source using a pipe, transferring it to another source. Now, the pipe could be big, the pipe could be small, the pipe could be the exact same size as the source. The pipe could be the exact same size as the destination. The goal is to move fluid from one end to another. In terms of PowerShell, you are taking the results of one commandlet, because the result could be one object. And by the way, output results of PowerShell commandlets are objects. They're not string, they're not text, they're objects. And objects have properties, they have methods, they have events. And these are the things that we want to manipulate, maybe do some formatting, maybe do some filtering, maybe do some sorting, just like how you would with data. But in this case, again, it's a collection of objects. So let's look at how we can use PowerShell and pipes to make sense and build on what we have done so far. So let's expand this a bit. I'm going to take this, get service, or better yet, let's use the get PS drive. Get PS drive will display all of the available drives and volumes that I have in here, but I'm only concerned about C drive, right? The C drive. This is the only thing that I'm concerned about, because the use case, I want to check for free space on my drive, specifically the drive that contains my SQL Server databases, so that I can get alerted, so that I can provision additional space if need be to prevent my databases from switching to read-only mode without me switching into read-only mode. But that's one of the things that I need to work on. So I'm going to use a pipe command. Pipe. The results of this commandlet, get PS drive, I'll pass through the pipe to another PowerShell commandlet. In this case, I'm going to use the where object commandlet, similar to your where clause in SQL. I'm going to wrap it into a script block and then process the results of the get PS drive PowerShell commandlet, pass it onto the where object PowerShell commandlet, and then figure out what I can do with this. So I'm going to introduce you to the concept of the $_. $_ represents an object in a collection of objects as a result of the get PS drive. So in this case, I've got a couple of objects: name A, alias C, cert, D, env, function, the registry. These are all objects. $_ represents every single object in here. So think of this as filtering through all of this results of that particular commandlet. And I am going to use provider. I'm grabbing that provider because that's a property, I'm assuming, because I see it there. Provider equal. I'm going to use file system. Okay, file system. Ooh, wait a second. I don't get anything, but I am passing a provider value equal to file system. So what could be wrong? Well, let's explore. I don't know exactly what's in here, so I am going to, this is going to be, excuse me, first time you'll see me use the get member PowerShell command. So get PS drive. I'm going to pass it to a get member PowerShell commandlet because I want to know if I'm actually getting the right property name. Because provider might not be the right property name, it could be an alias. So provider is indeed the right one, so why don't we do this? Get PS drive, select provider. Oh, there we go. So it's not really file system, but it's this value. So maybe I can use like and excuse me, use a wildcard in there. There we go. Now it's making sense. So what you've seen here is using a PowerShell commandlet, the output of which is passed on to pipe, and the results of which were passed on to the where object, and individual items in the object collection are filtered based on the provider property value. I want to look at the provider property value and display only those that look like a file system or wildcard plus file system. Then I can build on this. Select, I don't know, root and free. So we're building on top of what we already did. There we go. Free, the root, and then, well, displays the name, and then free. But of course, it doesn't mean anything because I need to do, because this is in bytes. I still need to format that. So we can introduce some byte conversions like this, where you're now converting the output and formatting that so that it's a little bit more readable. Ha, there we go. Root, free, and free space in gigabyte. Gives me a little bit more meaningful information. So we've just built on top of what we had. We started using stuff like our get command to get all the different commandlets. We picked one, we started using it. Like in this case, the get service commandlet, pass in the name. Okay. And I can even pass computer names in here. TDPRD071. And let's assume I got several. 5, several machines that I want to look at. It does show me, you know, the service, the status, and what the display name is, so we can pass the results of which to select object. I try not to use aliases because I want to make sure that whoever is going to be reading my scripts, as I start building scripts, whoever is going to be reading my scripts, it's easier for them to understand what I'm trying to do. Okay, select object, status, server, and status. Probably not a property, but you get the gist of it. Name, and then status. So we're building on top of this. We are seeing again, commandlet, parameters and parameter values, like in this case, a collection of parameter values, pipe, character, and then display. And you can see more of this and passing more into this. Okay, I did mention a thing or two about aliases. I try not to use aliases because it's, well, it's alias. Sometimes it's easy to use an alias, but then when you pass it on to somebody, they're not familiar with the aliases, and then they just guess. There are built-in aliases. You can create your own aliases. I try not to use those aliases. If you look at some of these aliases, they look kind of similar to some of the Linux commands. Like for instance, get content is cat, or CAT, is to read the contents of a file displayed in the screen. So in this case, let's say I want to use get content. Get content. And again, I like the tab autocomplete, program files, Microsoft SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server. I'm looking at root directory, MS SQL, and then error log. Part of the things, or part of the task that you're going to be doing is scraping through the SQL Server error log and looking for potential issues that happened through the past, in the past 24 hours. So I can use that and retrieve. There you go. There's a significant number of errors in, and by the way, again, this is local. Okay, I'm running get content to read the SQL Server error log for the SQL Server Developer Edition on the DBA Workstation, not remotely. Okay. What else? What else do I have? Oh, you've seen a thing or two about PowerShell remoting where I'm running a commandlet and passing parameters like computer name and running it across different servers in my network. Okay, that's an example of PowerShell remoting, where I'm working from the server in the middle, which is my DBA workstation, running the query, or not query, but running the commandlet or the script, and then it gets executed across multiple servers at the same time. Okay, and then there are cases where I need to log into the server remotely, one-on-one, kind of like a secured shell where I would SSH into a server if something happened, maybe an execution of the script didn't return what I wanted. So for instance, there was an error, I can manually log in. And the beauty of this is I don't have to go into launching remote desktop, passing my credentials, passing server names, and I already am logged in using my credentials. Why pass those credentials? And I don't like the idea of saving credentials onto a remote desktop session or remote desktop file. Okay, that's the beauty of having this. So why don't we go back to our environment and use this command right here, get PS drive. Okay, keep in mind, these are all local. This information is local. Why don't we grab this, copy, and instead of just running it locally, I will use invoke command, computer name, and I will pass these computers as a parameter, and then I'll pass script block, And then what I'll do is I'll pass this inside. So now we're literally building on top of what we have done. We're using invoke command and passing a list of computer names, which means whatever is inside the script block, which is this, get free space for all of my drives, and I will run that across all 5 servers. Run it. So now I'm displaying all of these things, and note that it also shows me PS computer name. So this is for TDPRD 074. Well, let's be more fancy and pipe that to out grid view. So this is kind of like a spreadsheet, if you may. So it's a grid view that displays all of the results. I pipe the result of this long command that we just built into a grid view. Let's run that. Wait until grid view shows up. There you go. So now I have, I can filter that. And if you look at this, I now have information about free space for all the C drive. Well, for one, these are all servers running on C drive, SQL servers, that is. And I intentionally use C drive here because, again, there's this misconception. I almost fell into the trap of correcting one of my customers from way back when. All of their servers, the example that I used earlier where we were migrating an entire data center to another location. First thing that I noticed is that all of their database servers only had C drive. I was about to fire an email to their CIO or their CTO telling them, hey, why are you keeping all your databases on the C drive? I'm just glad that I did not do that, because I found out that they were using mount points. So all of their databases are on C:\databases, and that particular folder is a mount point to a high-end all-flash array. And they're on the C drive, but it's a redirection to the all-flash array. So it's one of those things where, okay, my mistake. Just because it's on the C drive doesn't mean it's not following best practice. Anyway, so this is one of those examples. So we're literally building on top of these things. But this is running a script or a script block across multiple servers at the same time. What if something went wrong and I want to log into that machine? This is where I can use enter PS session to get into kind of like a secured shell. Open a session, connect to the server, and then run commandlets. I will use TDPRD 071. And in this case, notice that I have this prompt, TDPRD 071. Now, this command prompt here is for my DBA Workstation, and it's telling me this is the host name. If I do the same thing, here it's telling me it's on a remote server. Okay. In fact, we can do this side by side, where I could do ipconfig, and it's telling me I've got multiple IP addresses. Same thing, ipconfig. This one is for my Windows 10 workstation, or my DBA Workstation. It only has one IP address, versus this one is for my remote machine. I'm already connected to my remote machine. And notice that I have multiple IP addresses for one network adapter, and I have another one network adapter. So this is just showing you that I am now connected to my remote machine. The scenario here is I'm already authenticated with an Active Directory. I didn't pass anything in here. The command simply is, the command simply is enter PS session, no need to pass my credential because I'm already authenticated anyway. So now if I do a get, or maybe use an alias, dir, and then with this one, notice that I have two completely different C drive. Okay, this one is for my remote SQL server. This is for my Windows 10. Windows 10 workstation. This one. This one. There we go. That's why you see a totally different file system in there. And I can back out of this. Oh, by the way, you can now run PowerShell commandlets. Of course, the assumption here is whatever commandlets you're using on your DBA workstation, the same modules are installed on the server. One of the reasons I have a dedicated DBA workstation is because sometimes I cannot install anything. I keep the principle of minimal surface area. I'm not installing anything other than what is needed on the server. Well, in some cases, if I can strip the GUI away, I will. Okay, and I can run the exact same thing. Get service, name, MS SQL Server, same thing. Get PS drive, same thing. Okay. However, again, this is running on the remote machine. And I can exit out of this using the exit PS session. So now if I can run hostname again, I'm back to my Windows 10 workstation, same as this. All right? Now what? So far, all I've seen is Windows stuff and nothing on SQL Server. Or is it really? I did mention, though, that we're just building on top of starting from basics, because the more you understand how things work within the context of PowerShell, the easier it is to branch out. If I wanted to manage Active Directory, it's basically the same thing. I just need to know the right PowerShell commandlets. If I need to manage VMware or NetApp or, Dell or any other servers that have PowerShell commandlets or modules associated with them, I can easily do that. Okay? But what about SQL Server? This is where SMO comes in. Okay? So what exactly is SMO? SMO is a collection of objects that are designed for programming all aspects of managing SQL Server. Simply put, it's the API for managing SQL Server. Whenever you're running a SQL Server Management Studio or Azure Data Studio, while you're managing SQL Server, you're tapping into SMO underneath. It's a set of objects, object collections, and APIs for managing SQL Server. It is what SQL Server Management uses. It is what monitoring tools use. It is what third-party vendors use. They tap into SMO to do whatever they need to do, like backups, for instance, monitoring SQL Server. All of these things use SMO. You can take advantage of SMO in managing SQL Server. Of course, the challenge there is understanding what else is available for SMO. So let me go back to this environment and use one command that, well, this is not necessarily SMO, but because SQL Server leverages the .NET framework, this is basically using, well, the .NET framework. So what does this thing do? It basically displays all of the available SQL Server instance on my network. assuming, of course, that you have the SQL browser service running, okay, and everything's discoverable. Or if SQL Server browser is not running, you have all of your SQL Server instances listening on a default port number. But then the interesting thing here is when Microsoft came up with PowerShell specifically, or the PowerShell modules for SQL Server, it's a little bit cumbersome. It is a little bit challenging, and this is why, this is one of the reasons why the community came together and have a go of creating something more meaningful, creating something that is more powerful, hence DBA Tools and DBA Checks. You can download the modules. In fact, you can see the modules that I have been using to, when I was displaying all of the commandlets in there. So let me switch back into my environment and just show you, get command, module, DBA Tools. This would list all of the available SQL Server related, not SQL Server, SQL Server management commandlets within the DBA Tools commandlet. So I'll grab this and show you some of the limitations of this. I'll replace the get PS drive PowerShell commandlet, or the command, and instead of doing that, I will read the SQL Server error log from all of those servers. Okay, so it's basically reading the SQL Server error log, but instead of reading just one error log for one server, I'm going to read all through 5 servers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Run that. Now here's the thing. The assumption here, of course, is, well, you're passing everything and, assuming that everything is version 13. What if they're not? In fact, this is exactly what the error message says. This does not exist. Well, maybe because it's a different version. Remember, the one on my DBA Workstation is running SQL Server 2016 Developer Edition. The one on any of those servers could be anything. So maybe we could change this, right? Maybe we could change this to 14 and see. Again, assuming that those servers are running SQL Server 2016. Nope, they're not running SQL Server 2016. However, one server is running SQL Server 2017, or 17 for that matter. Okay, and we have to have something that's standard across the board instead of guessing, checking whether or not, because what I have here is 73 is not SQL Server 2017, 74 is not SQL Server 2017, 75. So maybe only 71 and 72 are running SQL Server 2017. The rest, I don't know. And this is where tools like DBA Tools come in. Get DBA error log. And instead of guessing what version of SQL Server, what file path, what folder structure, I will use get DBA error log instead. Now I don't have to worry, now in this case I don't have to worry about what version of SQL Server, what folder, what path, everything. It just tells me. Okay? Stop that. Maybe pipe that to out-grid view. That way you can see. I'll let it run in the background. And this is the beauty of doing or using DBA Tools, because now I can have a compilation. Now this is 71, which did not show up, by the way, when we were running invoke command earlier. So now I have 71, and 71 as far as SQL Server error log is concerned is running SQL Server 2017. TD PRD 073, 74. There's a lot. It's reading all of these. 72 probably looks like an upgrade is happening. But again, this is the power of something as simple as one PowerShell commandlet to do all of this instead of me trying to figure out what version of SQL Server am I working with for these versions, especially if you're dealing with something like hundreds of servers. Okay. Now, there are different checks that are available, and this is where get DBA check comes in. By the way, DBA Tools.io is the URL for you to download and install PowerShell for SQL Server, specifically DBA Tools and DBA Checks. Now, DBA Checks is a subset of DBA Tools. So I want to show you some of those things that you can do, like run get DBC check. Let me close that. Let's clear those out. Get DBC check. And this will display all of the different checks. It will display the configuration settings. What do you want to check? There's so much. It's up to you to configure whatever checks are running. And just to give you some of those things, like what's the power setting for a specific SQL Server instance. I just checked where one says balanced, all because of this. And you know, it's categorized according to group, the type, unique tag, all tags, and their description, which did not show up. Like for instance, check for suspect pages. Oops. Check for disk capacity. Check for power plan. Okay. So while I'm doing this, while I'm showing you this, let me just run a quick check. There we go. Onto a SQL Server instance, and I only want to show those that fail. I want to run all checks, and I will only want to show the failure. Okay, I want this to run in the background so that you can have an idea of what we're looking at here. Plus, I'm also going to be running something in the background, because the amazing team, the amazing people that built DBA Tools created a Power BI dashboard that displays all of this in a visual format so that you can show this as a report. Kind of like how you can stabilize your environment, checking whether or not some of the settings meet your desired state and keeping it consistent, because there will be configuration drift depending on emergencies, some of the things that you have to do. So I'm just going to run this in the background. And the beauty of having DBA checks is, you know, these red are not errors. So these are actually issues based on the configuration settings that you want to check. Okay? Let's just scroll through them one by one. And I'll just set this thing up so that it's ready by the time we get to the portion where it's showing the data in very nice visualization. I'm going to connect to my local SQL server and pass the database name, because I've already stored the results of the DBA checks into a relational database so that I can come up with these. But let's go back to that this example. I did mention that the red does not mean error. It actually means these are the issues that DBA checks found. For instance, mount shared folder, failed. tells me that mount shared folder job failed, and it is telling me that the job failed. These are the things you want to check, right? If a job runs once every 24 hours, you want to check whether it failed or not. What else? There's just way too many. There's a lot of issues in here. What else? Log backup, sales DB should be less than 15 minutes old. The log backup for this particular database is less than 15 minutes old. Database should have a percentage used lower than 75%. So these are the things that you can configure, you can check, and then tweak depending on what you need. Okay, what else? Ooh, that's interesting. The database SQL Server inventory should have auto close set to false, but it is true. So some databases in there are set to auto close. Then auto shrink, SQL Server database, and SQL Server inventory database. We can log into TDPRD 073, SQL Server inventory, look at the properties, and indeed, I got auto close is true, auto shrink is true, and some of the properties are set to false. Didn't follow or doesn't follow recommended best practice. And DBA Checks flagged this and reported them in you running this. And all I did was to run invoke DBC check, invoke DBC check, and then pass the instance name. Make sure I run all the checks and only show the failures. Okay, I'm pretty sure there's more in here. There were issues. Database owners, this shouldn't be the one. DBC check DB was not run on the system databases. MSDB should be set to full. And again, you can tweak these configuration settings. Again, we're just scratching the surface here. I want to end I want to end by showing you the Power BI dashboard. Like I said, you can collect that information, pass that through a relational database, and then use the Power BI dashboard to connect to that database and to showcase kind of like a trend. And the way I look at this is we want to get as close as possible to desired state, meaning you're following your own best practices, community recommended, Microsoft recommended best practices, as well as what you believe is applicable to you. Like for instance, configuration settings for, of course, hopefully not auto close and auto shrink. They're not turned on or they're not enabled. Stuff like certain percentages of free space, only a simple recovery model for some databases, but not all, so you can tweak those. The beauty of this is, again, you can look at it from a trend basis. I replaced the name, but this is something that I did a couple of months ago, where the approach was to somehow show what is happening as we're running the checks. So if you look at the data, the checks have been running almost every day. Beginning of this date, they had 651 passed, 87 failed, and then this one, 657 passed, 81 failed, excuse me, up until the point where the number of failures, excuse me, was reduced. The goal here is to stabilize your environment to a point where you're getting as close as possible to your desired state, making sure that you're following recommended best practices, your own internal best practices, and also to show progress. I don't expect you to change excuse me, stuff in production just because you found something in here. I want you to follow proper change management practices. And then after submitting a request, including some of the findings, like for instance, what we found running DBC check or DBA checks, submitting a changed request, making sure it's approved, changing it, validating, and rerunning the check until you see how the environment has evolved. The use case for this is a 4-node Windows Server failover cluster with an availability group. First day, we only ran it on one server, the primary replica. Yes, you can do checks for your availability groups and failover clustered instances. So again, the use case here is we ran it on a primary replica because all of the secondary replicas should be the same. Should be. That's ideal. And then as we were fixing those issues, we were also double checking on the secondary replicas until finally when all the secondary replica issues have been fixed, we ran it across the entire AG and each individual replicas. This is kind of like the use case here where you got to have an idea of some of the checks, like for instance, last backup verify only, last good DBCC check DB, last full backup times, auto growth for data file, for future file growth, is query store enabled, and so on and so forth. Okay, and you can again define what best practice means to you, what your desired state looks like. You can configure them using DBA checks. Okay. And with that sums up what I really wanted to say is you work smart, not hard. You want to make sure that you are getting more done without putting in more hours of work, without killing yourself working. This is why I'm a big fan of automation, because you can scale out and scale up. You get more accomplished without spending more time working. Okay? This is the goal. So you can become more productive while also making time to enjoy the things that you love, right? That sums up how you can this session on how you can automate your SQL Server daily DBA checks or daily database checks. My name is Edwin Sarmiento, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions.